Welcome to Bipolar Talks, your space for honest, educational, and mindful conversations about mental health, especially when it comes to understanding bipolar disorder. If you're tuning in today, take a deep breath, settle in, and let's explore this journey together, mindfully and with compassion. Today's episode is titled, Is Bipolar Genetic? What Science Says. Before we dive in, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share this episode with someone who might need this information. Your support helps us spread awareness and compassion around mental health. Alright, let's mindfully begin. When people ask, is bipolar disorder genetic? They're often hoping for a clear yes or no answer. But the reality, just like the disorder itself, is more nuanced. To truly understand the science, we need to break this down. First, what do we mean by genetic? Genetics refers to the DNA we inherit from our biological parents. Certain traits, like eye color or blood type, are entirely genetic. But others, like mental health conditions, are influenced by a complex interplay of genetics, biology, environment, and experience. Bipolar disorder isn't passed down in a simple one-gene fashion like Huntington's disease. Instead, it's a polygenic condition, meaning multiple genes are involved, and none of them on their own are enough to cause the disorder. Think of it more like a genetic predisposition, not a guarantee. Have you ever looked at your family and wondered whether mood swings or mental illness might run in the blood? That's a natural and valid question, and one science has been working to answer for decades. One of the first ways scientists explored the question of genetics in bipolar disorder was through family studies. These studies look at large groups of people who have a diagnosed case of bipolar disorder and examine how common the condition is in their relatives. Here's what researchers found. If one parent has bipolar disorder, their child has around a 10 to 15% chance of developing it. If both parents have it, the risk jumps up to about 30 to 40%. Identical twins who share 100% of their DNA have a 40 to 70% concordance rate, meaning if one twin has bipolar, the other twin has a significantly higher risk. This shows us two things. 1. There is a clear genetic component. Bipolar disorder runs in families. 2. But it's not entirely genetic. If it were, identical twins would always both have the disorder. But they don't. So genes matter. But they're not the whole story. Twin studies provide some of the strongest evidence for the heritability of bipolar disorder. These studies separate identical, monozygotic, and fraternal dizygotic twins to see how often both twins are affected. Identical twins share 100% of their DNA, while fraternal twins share only about 50%, just like any siblings. The higher the rate of bipolar in identical twins compared to fraternal ones, the more we can infer that genes are involved. The heritability estimate for bipolar disorder is often cited to be around 70 to 85%, making it one of the most heritable psychiatric conditions. But again, this isn't about a single gene. It's a cumulative risk built up by many small genetic variations, plus the impact of life experiences, trauma, stress, and even sleep patterns. Adoption studies also give us clues. If children born to parents with bipolar disorder, but raised by adoptive families, still have a higher risk of developing the illness, it strongly suggests a genetic link. And indeed, studies show that even in adopted individuals, the biological parent's mental health plays a major role in the child's risk. Isn't that fascinating? Paints a picture where genes load the gun but environment pulls the trigger. In recent years, the field of genetics has exploded with new tools. One of the most powerful is the Genome-Wide Association Study, or GWAS. GWAS involves scanning the entire genome of thousands, even millions, of people to find common genetic variants associated with bipolar disorder. So far, scientists have identified dozens of genes that may be involved. Some of the genes linked to bipolar disorder also overlap with those for schizophrenia, major depression, and ADHD, suggesting shared biological pathways. One example is a gene called CACNA1C, which affects calcium channels in brain cells. Mutations in this gene have been linked to bipolar disorder, depression, and schizophrenia. But again, it's not deterministic. Having these genes doesn't mean you'll develop the disorder. It just raises the risk slightly. Most people with these variants never develop bipolar disorder, and many with the disorder don't have these particular gene changes. That's the complexity of human biology, especially when it comes to the brain. Now, let's talk about epigenetics, an exciting and fast-growing area of science. Epigenetics studies how environmental factors can switch genes on or off without changing the actual DNA sequence. Think of it as a dimmer switch rather than a light switch. So even if someone is born with a genetic risk for bipolar disorder, whether or not that risk gets activated might depend on things like childhood trauma, drug use, sleep disruptions, extreme stress, lack of emotional support. All of these factors can influence how genes are expressed. It helps explain why one person in a family might develop bipolar disorder while another, who shares similar genes, doesn't. The epigenetic lens helps us understand that while genes give us a framework, our lived experiences also shape our mental health outcomes. This is a common question, especially from people with a family history of mental illness. The short answer? Not yet. There is no simple genetic test that can tell you definitively whether you'll develop bipolar disorder. The genetic architecture is too complex, involving hundreds of risk variants, each with a small effect. That being said, research is moving toward polygenic risk scores, which combine information from multiple genes to estimate a person's likelihood of developing a condition. But these scores are still in development and not yet accurate or reliable enough for clinical use. So if you've ever thought, should I get tested to see if I have the bipolar gene? The reality is science isn't quite there yet. And even if we were, knowing your risk doesn't equal certainty. The most accurate way to think about bipolar disorder is not genes versus environment, but genes and environment working together. Here's a metaphor. Imagine your genetic code is like the blueprint for a house, but your experiences, environment, and choices are the construction crew. They determine how the house is actually built and maintained. Some people may have a blueprint that includes fragile wiring, a vulnerability to mood instability. But if their construction crew is well supported, with love, therapy, stability, and healthy coping strategies, that house can be strong, safe, and resilient. That's why mental health isn't just a biological destiny. It's also shaped by your relationships, your habits, and your healing journey. So what does all this mean if bipolar disorder runs in your family? Should you be worried? Not necessarily. Awareness is power. If you know you may be at higher risk, you can watch for early signs and symptoms, prioritize regular sleep and self-care, avoid substances that trigger episodes, build a strong support system, seek therapy or counseling even before symptoms start. If you're a parent with bipolar disorder, it's normal to feel anxious about what this might mean for your children. But remember, genes are not destiny. What matters just as much, if not more, is how emotionally safe, supported, and seen your children feel growing up. Mindful parenting, early interventions, and open conversations can make a huge difference. What's next for the science of bipolar disorder? Researchers are working hard to develop better polygenic risk scores, explore gene-environment interactions, understand how childhood trauma influences gene expression, create more personalized treatment plans based on genetics. In the future, it's possible we'll have tools that help us identify risk earlier, intervene sooner, and tailor medication or therapy to an individual's genetic profile. But we're not there yet. And until then, we rely on the tools we do have: listening, empathy, medication, therapy, self-awareness, and community. So, is bipolar disorder genetic? The answer is yes, but not entirely. Genes play a major role, but they don't determine everything. Environment, experience, and choices matter deeply too. And that's a hopeful truth. It means we're not powerless. It means healing is possible. It means that no matter your genetic code, there are ways to understand yourself better, protect your well-being, and live a full, meaningful life. If this episode resonated with you, please like, comment, subscribe, and share this podcast with someone you love. The more we talk about bipolar disorder openly, the more we break stigma and build understanding. Thank you for listening to Bipolar Talks, where we believe every brain has a story, and every story matters. And remember, this YouTube video is for informational purposes only and does not replace professional medical advice. Please consult a qualified mental health professional for diagnosis, treatment, or any questions regarding your mental health.